This Upskill with Yennefer video will show you how to create a simple pivot table in Google Sheets, format your pivot table, check your data for errors, and fix missing data. Start with your data in columns and rows. The top column should be your headers. Ideally, there should not be any empty columns or rows in your data. The sample data set we have here is of dog breeds and their various attributes. We want to create a pivot table that shows the average maximum life expectancy by breed group along with a count of the number of breeds in each breed group. The final product is shown here. Let's get started. First, we need to highlight the data set we want to use in the pivot table. Click on the first cell, A1, then, while holding the Shift key down, drag your mouse over the entire data set, including all the columns and rows of data you want to include. With the data set highlighted, click on Insert on the top menu bar, and then choose the Pivot Table option from the drop-down. In the pop-up box, highlight the radial button for New Sheet, and then click on Create to generate the pivot table. When the new sheet is generated, you will have a blank pivot table on the left-hand side and the pivot table editor on the right-hand side with 2 columns. The first time you do this, you may see some suggestions in the first column on the right. You can just click the arrow to close these. From the far right column, select the column label for the data you want to pivot on. In our case, we will select breed groups since we want to pivot on this column. Grab the column label and drag it into position. In our case, that is in the rows position. Drag breed group under the word rows to add it to the pivot table. The different breed groups are now showing in the rows of the pivot table in ascending order. Since we want to find out the average maximum life expectancy by breed group, we will select the max life expectancy label and drag that under the values section to add it to the pivot table. In the main pivot table, you will see a new column has been added to the pivot table. On the right side, find and open the Summarize by drop-down list for the max life expectancy. Since we want the average by breed group, in the Summarize by menu we will select Average from the drop-down. We also wanted to add a count of the number of breeds within each breed group. Back on the right side, in our list of column labels, we will select Breed and drag it into the values position directly underneath max life expectancy. Be careful to not accidentally replace the max life expectancy, as you will need both in the values section. In the main pivot table, you will see a new column has been added to the pivot table. On the right side, find and open the Summarize by drop-down list for the breed. Select Count Unique. Next, we will format the column headers to wrap so we can make the table look more professional and easier to read. We will first highlight cells B1 and B2, the headers that we want to wrap. Click Format on the top menu. Then click Wrapping, and then Wrap. Now your headers will wrap and you can adjust the column width or center the data in the cells. You can also change the names displayed in the pivot table header row. Just click into the cell and modify it. Here we have changed the cell names from the original values of some of max life expectancy and count of breed to simply life expectancy and number of unique breeds. This makes the pivot table more readable. Before we send our pivot table off to our boss, let's double check the results and see if we notice anything that looks out of place or inaccurate. In our example, we can see that we have a cell in the breed group column that's blank, but that also has data in the values columns. We can easily drill in on this line to see what's going on and do some error checking. To drill in, highlight the far right cell with a value in it. Now quickly double-click with the mouse to drill in on that data. The pivot table will create a new sheet with just those results so you can review them. We can easily see that the Yorkshire Terrier line is missing the breed group. We can fill this in, and the pivot table will automatically update. Just make sure to fill it in on the original sheet where you selected the data that would be included in the pivot table, rather than updating it on the sheet that was created by drilling in. Let's go fix this problem by updating the original sheet used to create the pivot table. First, we locate the row with Yorkshire Terrier, and then we find the column for breed group. Then update the blank cell with the correct value, in this case, working group. Then return to the pivot table sheet. Notice that the pivot table updated immediately. The blank cell and its corresponding line are gone, and the number of breeds in the working group increased by 1. You may also notice that the pivot table editor is no longer showing in the right-hand side. To reopen it, click on the pencil icon directly underneath the pivot table. This will allow you to continue adding values to your table. Once you have all the data in your pivot table and have formatted the column widths and labels, You can also add a few rows above the table to add a nice header. Here we have added a name for our pivot table, breed group statistics. Your pivot table is now ready to share. That's how you create and use a simple pivot table in Google Sheets. Have fun analyzing and visualizing your data. If you found this helpful, please click like and subscribe. Thanks for upskilling with Yennefer.